Hi and good afternoon, everybody. It's so great to have you all join us here today. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everybody onto National Careers Week Meet Your Future 2021, which is part of the Bridge GM Meet Your Future work shadowing campaign. My name's Claire Walker and I'm the Enterprise Coordinator working in schools and colleges in the Stockport area, but as part of the Bridge GM team over a Greater Manchester Combined Authority. If you attend a school or a college in any other part of Greater Manchester, then you'll also have an enterprise coordinator like me working with your school too. As well as our guest speaker today from ENGIE, I'm also joined this afternoon by my colleague Tom, and Tom's going to be taking care of the technology and making sure the quality of the broadcast works for everybody today. So Meet Your Futures was launched in April 2019 and it was always intended as a simple but a very effective way to enable young people like yourselves to be able to have conversations with employers and businesses whilst experiencing different workplaces and working environments. And we really hope that these types of events and activities will help you in understanding what the world of work has to offer you, especially living in this part of the country, and in helping you make sense of the options and the pathways that you might follow after leaving school or college. So over the past 12 months, we've been speaking with young people from all 10 boroughs across Greater Manchester to try and find out how you're feeling, how you feel you should be supported through the pandemic, your concerns, your return to school, and the choices and next steps you take in the future. So we have been listening and we've learned a lot from you, and we have developed a suite of information, resources and services that are there to help you. These can all be found on GMACS, that's GMACS, which is a webpage that you can use to support some of the decisions and choices that you'll need to make. GMACS also allows you to speak in person with a member of the Bridge GM team, and they'll be able to hopefully guide you through some of the questions that you have. If they can't help you, we'll certainly direct you and signpost you on to another source of information or advice. So you're joining us here today on day 4 of a week-long timetable of events, Q&As and activities and conversations with employers and businesses representing sectors and industries across Greater Manchester. We've also been hearing from notable people about their personal education and careers journeys and how they ended up doing what they're doing today. In this session now, we're absolutely delighted and privileged to be joined by and able to hear from Michael Cullen, who's a commercial manager working with ENGIE. Specifically today, Michael will be talking us through quantity surveying. So Michael's going to walk and talk us through a presentation, some slides, and if everything has been covered but you still have questions and feel you'd like to ask something extra, please do so through the chat function and we will deal with that later. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Michael from ENGIE. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Claire. Hopefully everyone can see that. Please let me know if that's not working. So yeah, my name is Michael Cullen. I'm a commercial manager at ENGIE Regeneration Limited. Amongst other things, we undertake social housing, refurb and regeneration projects in the construction industry. I've worked in the industry for 23 years now as a quantity surveyor at various levels, and as Claire said, I've been asked to talk about quantity surveying, so I will try and make it as interesting as I can, and apologies in advance for the slides, which are a bit old person slides, I think. So the construction industry then, it's a big part of the UK economy basically. These figures, obviously they're from various websites, they may be a year or two out of date, but speaking generally, the industry's got a turnover of £112 billion in the UK. Hefty part of the UK's economy. There are over 300,000 construction firms in the UK, which seems like an incredible number. The vast majority of those will be sole traders, one-man bands or partnerships, rather than the part of the industry that we're looking at today. In terms of the bigger companies that would need quantity surveyors, Balfour Beatty are the current leading company in the UK, which is based on profit, and they turn over 8.4 billion a year. Now, there's a lot more to the construction industry than just the trades that we might all think of. So as you can see, there's 2.7 million people employed in the industry in the UK, which again is a really big number. So these are employed across a whole range of positions. There's many different types of job in the sector. So you've got your obvious joiners, bricklayers, electricians, etc., the tradesmen, to architects, engineers, site managers, QSs, of course, which is what we talk about today. And then the bulk of the staff are support staff in inverted commas. So you've got admin staff, you've got accountants, payroll, buying, IT, health and safety, etc. We're talking about quantity surveying, but there is many opportunities within the construction industry in the UK. Again, Balfour Beatty, they employ the most people, 26,000 people in the UK. And there are also 60,000 quantity surveyors operating in the UK. But notwithstanding some of those big numbers on the previous slides, for as long as I've worked in the industry, we seem to have had a shortage of people coming into the industry. There's always been talk of a skills shortage, and that's across all levels, tradesmen, professionals. There's always seems to be not enough people for what is required. So if you do choose to enter the industry, you'll probably always be in work, which is something to think about. So what is a QS? Now, it's quite a good definition that I found here. So it's a construction industry professional with expert knowledge on construction costs and contracts. Now, I've heard it described as the accountants of the construction industry. I'm not totally sure about that. I think QSs have a lot more interaction with people than accountants who just go away and look at the numbers. There's a lot more to it than that. And they also need to develop good knowledge of construction contracts and how to apply them. So in construction, we have our own set of contracts. So they're not particularly legal. It's written in understandable language, but as QSs, it's our job to administer those contracts. So it's not, I know we talk about maths predominantly here today, but it isn't purely a maths role. So history and evolution, the role originally developed to prepare the bill of quants. Now, a bill of quants basically describes the material, items of work and quantities needed to basically construct a project. There is a need to develop one standard way of measuring and pricing construction work, so clients know that when they're receiving tenders and prices for jobs, everyone who submits it should have been pricing it in the same way. So that's how the industry first developed, the role first developed. The first recorded use of the term quantity surveyor was in 1859. So we've been around for a good while. We are a long established profession, even though the role has developed over that time. Now, originally, the QS role was mainly advising the clients against the nasty builders. A lot of clients won't have experience of construction matters, so their QS would offer impartial guidance and advice. But of course, if the client has a QS, the contractor wants one too. So that role developed. All the contractors started having QSs as well. Now, despite the name, production of bills of quantities is really less and less a part of the role these days. You do still get taught it at college, but I can't remember the last time I did a bill of quants. There's specialist companies, bill houses, they would produce most of the bills of quants rather than the PQS or the contractor's QS these days. Different types of QSs. The roles they do are similar. There's a lot of crossover, but they are, by definition, they are coming at the role from a slightly different angle. So the client's QS or the PQS, they work on the client side. So initially, they'd advise the client on high-level costs, So very rough ideas of costs. The client will say, I want to build X building, so big, and the PQS then will be able to develop up very rough figures. That will then develop into obtaining tenders from main contractors for that job. The contractors will price it, the PQS would analyse, they'd negotiate, and finally agree a price. They'd then be responsible for putting the main contract in place. So that's between the client and the main contractor, which is the contract that would use to administer that project. It'd be for the contractor to build the work, basically. They'd have a price agreed and all the rest of it, a period agreed, etc., etc. And once works are on site, they'd be managing it commercially. So they'd be valuing applications from the contractor's QS, issuing any instructions, and ultimately, at the end, agreeing the final account. Similarly, the contractor's QS would come at it from a different angle. So they'd have some involvement in pricing the tender, but they'd be heavily involved in negotiating the final figures and the main contract with the PQS. Now, once that's in place, they then need to procure the subcontractors, who are the people who will actually build the works on behalf of the main contractor. Generally, most main contractors now don't actually carry joiners or bricklayers or plumbers or electricians. We'd always have to employ subcontractors, specialists to do that work. And again, they would manage the works on site. So we'd submit applications to the client and the PQS, we'd agree those. At the same time, we'd be valuing subcontractors' submissions for their work. And at the end, we'd need to agree final accounts with both parties. And if the contractor has a QS and the client has a QS, generally subcontractors often want one too. Not every subcontractor has one, only the bigger ones, but their role is similar to the contractor's QS, only very much coming at it from their angle. Sub-QSs would also be more involved in placing supplier orders for materials, paying wages for the workers, stuff like that. Generally, contractors' QSs don't do that because there is support staff in a main contractor. And the sub-QS would also be managing the works on site from their angle. So again, submitting and agreeing valuations to the contractor's QS, valuing work submitted by their subcontractors and their suppliers, and agreeing final accounts. All QSs, key part of their role is the CVRs. Now, CVR stands for the cost value report, and it's basically forecasting what we think the end position will be. So every month we take the costs for that month, we put them into the CVR document, and the idea being we use these costs and we forecast what the end position will be. So as you can imagine, really important part of the role. And all QSs, no matter who they're working for, they need to be giving their bosses, their clients, an idea of what our final position needs to be. Very important skill. And in addition, any disputes that arise under the various contracts, it's our job as QSs to manage those disputes and ultimately resolve them to the satisfaction of all parties. So it is a very varied role. I don't think I can stress that enough. And it's a very varied industry as well. It takes all sorts of people, very different people, all working together to produce the same goal, really. But your day-to-day will be very different within your monthly commercial cycle. You could be walking around site, you could be in a meeting with the client, you could be agreeing a final account with a subby, which is a very different sort of meeting to a client meeting. You could be in the office prepping contract docs, making sure everything's picked up and is nailed on. Or once a month, you could be locked away, producing your CVRs, updating your monthly figures, and just immersing yourself in the numbers. It is a very varied role. That's one beauty of the job. Okay, so moving on to the link to the education and the curriculum section. So you will need a degree these days. Wasn't always the case when I started 20 years ago or so. My first boss was a former joiner who moved on from the trades and just trained himself up, learnt on the job. These days, though, you'll be competing against people who all have a degree, really. So there is more than one pathway to that degree, however, which we will come on to now. If I press the button, there we go. So you could apply to excuse me, you could apply to attend a full-time degree course. Now there's a list of A-level subjects there, which I won't read out, but there's some obvious ones on there like maths, which obviously we talk about today, law, business studies, economics. So all them subjects will be useful, but degree courses don't generally request specific A-level subjects. So that's not something you need to worry about. I suppose if you were doing A-levels in art, for example, your career path probably wouldn't be becoming a quantity surveyor. So generally it's those type of A-levels lend themselves to the QS degree. You can also go through a different route, A-level equivalents, MVQs. I don't have A-levels actually, I've got a BTEC as it was called then, a BTEC OND, which I got onto a degree with. Alternatively, you can start a HND or HNC in a construction related subject. And once you've completed that, that would allow you to start on your degree course later than the first year, your second year, say. So that does save time, and that helps you bridge the gap if your qualifications aren't necessarily enabling you to get onto the degree course. It's a 3-year course. It will be a 4-year course with the year out sandwich placement. Now that's where you work in industry for the year. It's normally between years 2 and 3, or it would be 2 and 3, 2 and 4. So you'd work for a year for a contractor or PQS. You'll be getting paid, and universities will help you with the placements, etc. And that's just to gain experience. I think there'll be some bits of college work you'd have to do during that year out. So you probably have to write a report on your year and what you've done. And then you go back to university for your final year. You would end up with a Bachelor of Science degree in quantity surveying. And if you do a dissertation, which is a piece of unique research, you would also be an honours degree. Most people do a dissertation. It's not that difficult. It's a wide-ranging course, so it has been a long time since I've been on it, so it may be completely different now, but you learn all about the industry, basically. There isn't really some QS secret stuff that they can teach you on the course. A lot of it is, it's taken from all kinds of different areas. So you do a lot of construction technology, you learn about how it's built, you dabble in structural mechanics, how it works, as well as the more obvious subjects, the maths is key for this section, law, QS procedures, economics, etc. It's a very varied course. There's certainly a lot of construction technology. You do learn an awful lot about how the construction is put together. Alternatively, you could do a part-time degree, which was the route I went down actually. So this is where you get a job with a PQS or a main contractor, and you work for them full time. But during term time, you spend 1 day a week at university. That would make it, I haven't put that here, apologies, but that would make it a 5-year course rather than 3. So it does seem a long time when you start, but it does fly by. So benefit of that is, or one benefit, the employer will pay your fees. You do normally have to sign up to stick with the employer for a couple of years after your degree finishes. So you can't just, thanks for the fees, I've got my degree, I'm off now. And of course, as well, you're getting paid for 5 years, and you are gaining good experience during your learning. There you go. I did say it was 5 years on the next slide. So it's exactly the same degree you end up with. It'll be an honours degree if you do a dissertation. And again, it's exactly the same subjects. Again, very wide ranging degree. Okay, so apologies about that. So yeah, looking at the different career routes, basically 3 main ones. You could be employed by a PQS practice. That means you work for a consultant. You'll be mostly office based and you'd need to get chartered. You could be employed by a main contractor. You're likely to be mainly site based, certainly initially. No need to be chartered. And it is looking at things from a more commercial point of view. When I say that, I mean, whereas a PQS is truly looking at it from an impartial point of view. What does the contract say, and trying to be an honest broker. When you're employed by a main contractor, your main reason for being there is to maximise the return of your employer. So you are looking at things more from that point of view rather than, oh, what does the contract say? It's more, what would be the best result for my employer? Similar to be a subcontractor as well. You're probably likely to be more mainly office based there, depends on the size of the project you're on. Again, no need to be chartered, and we can talk about chartered in the questions if you like. And again, it's very much more commercial driven. The PQS will be paid his flat fee no matter what the end position is. When you're working for a main contractor or subcontractor, the key is maximising the profit. And of course, the idea being everyone's allowed to make a profit. At the end of a job, the client should be happy with their returns, the contractor should be happy with their margin, and the subcontractor should be as well. You know, everyone's allowed to make a profit. Okay, so in terms of the math side of things, and I was advised that a lot of the people on this course are because of an interest in maths, or this presentation I should say. Apologies if not, but we're going to talk about maths anyway. Yeah, you need to understand numbers, basically. You need to be comfortable working with numbers. It's not, your day-to-day job isn't really difficult maths, if that makes sense. On a degree course, you need to do more advanced maths, but it's not A-level standard maths, as I will put it. But you do need to be comfortable with numbers. You need to be able to accurately understand projections and that sort of thing. It's a key part of the job is projecting the final position. Yeah, so just touching it there on this slide, the actual QS job maths is nothing more difficult than times and dividing, adding, subtracting. But it does come back to enjoying immersing yourself in numbers and spreadsheets and formulas and just being comfortable with making projections. That number says X here. What will it say in 3 years' time? And is this, understanding the science behind that. So yeah, maths is an important part of the role. It's not the be all and end all. Other subjects that I think would be helpful: economics, law, business studies, that sort of thing. So yeah, we talked about the degree earlier on. You do need a degree, so that would mean that you would need to progress. I apologise, I'm not sure what age you all are, but I'm assuming you're not A-level yet, so you need to progress on to A-levels or MVQ or other A-level equivalents, or as I spoke about earlier, the HND, HNC route. Okay, top 5 skills needed, one of which clearly isn't making nice, pretty presentations. So yeah, comfort with numbers comes back to that. Enjoying working with numbers. It's a big part of your working life is going to be looking at spreadsheets. You need to be comfortable with those. Some of them can get quite complicated. The CVR will have 20 or 30 tabs at times, all linking to each other. You need to be able to use formulas. I think for youngsters like yourselves, you're so skilled on Excel and whatnot, I don't think that'll be a problem. And you need to understand the principles of forecasting positions. So by that, I mean, as I touched on earlier, say you've got a forecast cost of 10 million for a 3-year project, and after 1 year, your costs are 5 million. Now, that needs to be flagging up in your mind as a red flag. There might be a reason for that, but on the face of it, it doesn't look right. So it's just understanding the principles of forecasting positions. And of course, you won't be asked on day one to suddenly be doing all that. That's what you're working towards. Second skill, I think it needs to be someone who's comfortable with analysis, someone who's got an analytical mind, if that makes sense. So you need to be able to read and extract relevant information within contracts and subcontracts, the tenders that subcontractors submit to you, and apply that information to a situation. You need to be able to take that information you've got, apply it to a situation, and then establish your position. And you need to be able to do that in a coherent manner that others can follow. No good being up in your head, which brings us to the next point, communication. All that numbers and analysis is no good if you can't bring people with you on the journey. You need to be able to communicate. And the big thing about this industry is there's a lot of different people, very, very different people involved. If you're talking to a subcontractor, it's very different to talking to a site manager or to an architect or to a client or to your director and so on. But you need to be able to communicate with all those people accurately and adequately. You need to be able to get across your position. And I put there more than one way to skin a cat. Did I not mention the animal cruelty as QSing? But by that I mean there's more than one way to communicate. It's not always about banging the table. Certainly when I was a younger QS, I was very quiet, but that's fine. As long as you can convince people of your argument, you can communicate it effectively with all different people. There's no one type of quantity surveyor. There's room for all different personality types. Teamwork, this is key. You have to be able to work with very different types of people. I've touched on this earlier, and you have to enjoy it. Like I said, we're not accountants. We're not taking away all the invoices and crunching them. We have to be out there on the site, talking to people and working with people. So teamwork is key. And possibly the most important of all, really, you've got to enjoy variety. If you're the sort of person who likes coming in and sitting at your desk 5 days a week for the next 50 years, it's probably not going to be the job for you. If you're contractors QS, your sites are going to be in different places. You're going to be could be based in Liverpool on one job. Could be Stoke the next, then Manchester. You could be a couple of years on the jobs. You are going to have to get used to travelling about. On the plus side, you do get company cars and allowances though. You deal with different people each day. You're sometimes on the site, you're sometimes in the office. You have very busy weeks where you're doing the numbers, and you'll have quieter periods. So there is variety, and hopefully, I think most people see that as a positive. You have to enjoy variety. Okay, so that's the top 5 skills. Now there's a bit of a task which I believe you're going to be issued by Claire and her team after this, which I think you're going to take away and do. If I just briefly talk you through it, which is probably tricky because none of us can actually see the task at the minute. But it's basically you're going to be pricing up 3 dummy house types. So there's a pricing document which shows cost for various elements of a house. Very simple this. So some are priced per metre squared, so £200 a metre squared. Some are priced per house type, £1,000 per unit. So it's nothing more tricky than that. There's then specification. So it's 3 different specifications for 3 different house types. So slightly different elements in each specification. So window type 2, kitchen type 3, electrical type 1. Now these types, they link back to the pricing document. So in the pricing document, there will be prices for all the window types, all the kitchen types, all the electrical types, etc. I think it'll make more sense when you actually see it. So what you do is you populate the summaries for the 3 house types. You make reference to the specification, refer to the pricing document, fill it in, and you come up with a total for each house type. And it's just to give you a very broad brush idea of the sort of things we do as a QS. Right, thank you for listening, everyone. I hope that was okay. I think we're more or less okay for time as well. So yeah, have you got any questions?
Thanks, Michael. That was really, really interesting. Very, very insightful. I've learned a lot there. I'm an ex-careers advisor, so I don't deal with young people directly in schools and colleges anymore, but it's certainly updated and refreshed my knowledge of that particular career and the career paths that you described there. That was great. Really, really comprehensive. We don't have any questions so far, so if I could just, I know Tom's just put a message there. Please do type your questions into the chat section there, and we'll more than happily put those questions to Michael. Oh, here we go, straight off. How many years does it take to become a QS? And yeah, that might be the different ways that you described there that you could do it.
Exactly, Claire. Yeah. So from your post GCSE qualifications, whatever they might be, if you do a full-time degree, it'll either be 3 or 4 years, depending if you do the sandwich option where you have the year out working in industry. And if you do the part-time degree, it'll be 5 years. So it isn't quite the same as lawyers when you become a lawyer. When you've got a QS degree, your first title will probably be assistant QS, working for a contractor or a PQS. Yeah. But to all intents and purposes, that's when you are a QS at various level.
Fantastic. I've got something I'd like to ask, if you don't mind, Michael. I think everyone's being very polite out there today, but I shall ask the question that everyone really wants to know, which is, without obviously disclosing your own salary, what are the sort of salary brackets someone could expect to earn from sort of qualifying as a trainee to, obviously, when you're far more experienced and you've climbed the ladder a little bit, what the kind of like salary brackets might be?
Yeah, I think if you were joining us with a degree, rather than the part-time degree option, you'd be starting in the 20s, definitely. Like I said earlier, there is a skills shortage. It is difficult to find good QSs. Yeah, and then you're progressing through the ranks. If I was taking on a good experienced QS to run their own project, you'd be looking to pay around 50k, and then upwards from that once you progress up through the levels. It like I sort of alluded to in the presentation, it's a good industry to be in because there is always a skill shortage. I don't know whether it's parents not encouraging children to go into it. I mean, my dad was actually a QS, even though I tried to avoid it myself. It caught me in the end, but I think a lot of parents see the industry as being dirty, dangerous, cold and unpleasant. I don't know, but it isn't. There's so many different jobs, not just QSing, obviously I'm talking about that, but within the industry, it's a big part of the UK's economy. We've not been affected in the same way by COVID. We're a protected industry, so we have carried on pretty much throughout, even though, as you can see, we're not back in the office yet. So yeah, you've got the opportunity to earn some decent money if you get your heads down.
Brilliant. Maybe not so much at the moment, Michael, because of the impact of COVID and kind of the ongoing kind of restrictions that's causing us all in whatever part of society we're part of. To what degree has the job allowed you to travel, whether within the UK or even overseas? And is that something you can expect, or something that you could do with a qualification that's been gained in the UK?
Yes, definitely, Claire. Obviously, the Middle East, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar. I know someone's working in Oman. It's perhaps dropped off a little bit, but certainly there is always opportunities to go and work over there. Australia, New Zealand, I think I'm right in saying that in both those countries, QS is a profession on the list for, there's a point system, isn't there, to emigrate to Australia and New Zealand. So they are looking for QSs in Australia, New Zealand, Canada. So when you're young, it's definitely something you could do. The world is crying out for QSs all over the world. So it's not something I've done myself. I came into it slightly later, but yeah, if that's something that someone's interested in emigrating, I think being a QS would definitely be a help rather than a hindrance in making it happen. Same in working other parts. Sorry, Claire. Same in working elsewhere in the UK. I have worked away briefly, but if you're young and single and you want to do it, yeah, most companies are very happy to find people who want to work away, basically, because a lot of older people like me don't want to do it.
No, that's great, because a lot of young people want to go into an opportunity that does allow some flexibility to do a bit of travelling, like you said, while you're young enough to do so.
Definitely,
without any ties.
Yeah, no, it's really is. Australia, it's definitely on the list there of protected trades, and obviously awful lot of building work in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. So a lot of people have gone over there, and there is good money.
Brilliant. Just in terms of a young person wanting to prepare themselves and equip themselves as best they can to be a kind of an impressive candidate or potential candidate to go into this kind of work, specifically from ENGIE's point of view, obviously being your organisation. Is it easy, or is it even possible for a young person to gain even just a couple of days work experience or work placement, just so they've got something on the CV that separates them from other people, if they've already got the qualifications that gives them that edge, perhaps?
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, we do have a CS. Well, this is how I ended up doing this. We do have a CSR department, corporate social responsibility. So. Yeah, you do see people coming and having days here and there. So yeah, it's one of those things, I suppose. If you want to ask, it's surprising how often people just say, yeah, why not? Yeah, to get a foot in the door. Definitely, that's something that we could make happen.
That's great. That's great. And of course, it's difficult in some cases because, of course, if you wanted to go into one of the construction occupations, that in itself brings difficulties and challenges, because you can't just walk onto a site, and there's all sorts of health and safety and sort of insurance implications, isn't there?
There is, yeah. Generally, everyone needs a CSCS card to work on site now, which is a touchscreen test. I think it's done at the same place as the driving license touchscreen test. It's not that difficult to do, but you still need to revise the book, etc., and attend the test, and that lasts for 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
Which again, there's a fee associated with that, and as you say, as a young person coming onto a construction site, there is insurance implications. You have to do a special risk assessment for anyone under 18, I think.
Sure.
So yeah, but it does happen. We do have apprentices.
Brilliant. That's amazing. Well, I think we've kind of covered everything, to be honest, Michael, but please accept our gratitude.
You're very welcome.
Really good to hear from you today. And as I say, I can't speak for the young people that are on the call, but it's certainly increased my knowledge and awareness of the industry and that particular occupation. So thank you very much on behalf of Bridge GM. Thanks very much to the students, young people, parents, carers, possibly teachers who've been on the broadcast with us this afternoon. And if there was anything that you didn't cover today, or if there's anything after you go away and the call's finished that you think, oh, I can't remember what Michael said about that, or I wish I'd asked such and such a question, hold on to it, mention it to your teacher or your careers leader at school. And if they can't help you with it, that you can get back in touch with us, like I said at the start of the call. Come to us via the GMAX website, and we can either directly deal with your questions, or if we can't, certainly put you in touch with somebody who can. So don't go away thinking that you've missed an opportunity, because you really haven't. Michael made reference there to the tasks, which I'm very glad that I'm not trying to do, because I wouldn't have a chance of doing that, because I can barely add up my own bank book. But if you've not had the opportunity to do that, do try and make sure that you undertake the task, just to give you an idea of the sort of things that Michael was talking about today, and to give you an idea of the sort of activities and tasks that you'd actually do if you were in that job. And all that leaves me to say is thanks very much for participating. Information again always on GMAX, and we will be sharing all of the videos and all of the live broadcasts that we've done this week against our new YouTube channel. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye bye now.
Thank you. Bye.